sober since 2019. Worse than tequila nightmares. France voicemails me in Quebecois.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. We have CBC hack David Cochrane going to be fluffing the pillows for Mélanie Joly, who's in recovery, I guess. This EV mandate is full of contradictions that favor China over Canada. Listen to the ramblings of this nonsense coming out of Minister Joly. Let's take a peek.
Minister, thank you for making the time on a busy day. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, David.
I know the Prime Minister today, when he was outlining a lot of these measures, said the goal is still to get to a zero tariff situation with the United States on autos. But if Donald Trump persists on the path on which he is going, and we don't end up in that space, what will the auto sector look like under this plan, should it all have to be implemented to fruition?
So I think that a lot of auto workers have been asking themselves that question. And I've been receiving also a lot of that question today while we're unveiling the plan. My point is in 2025, we've been reactive. We've seen and experienced, all of us across the country, the unpredictability coming out of the White House. In 2026, we have a plan, and we'll put it into place. And so what is happening in the auto sector is, obviously, we're in a trade war, 25% tariffs against our auto workers. But at the same time, there is a revolution that is happening where there are many new technologies that are being developed. And by 2035, David, we expect that 40% of all the auto market in the world will be EVs. So while the U.S. administration is taking its own decisions regarding the auto sector, we need to make sure that Canada is a place where there is progress, where we invest in technology, and that we can be that jurisdiction, that market in North America that is actually embracing change. And in turn, what will that make? It will make us a very strong competitor to build the right cars, not only, yes, for North America, and not only obviously for us in Canada, but also for the world. And why I say that is we cannot be hostage of our geography. We cannot be only dependent on what the US is doing. We need to make sure that also, well, we have the best auto workers in the world, the best auto plants in the world. We've been the most productive, we have the most productive plants in the world, that then this strength that we will harness will help us export around the world. Because let's remember, Canada has 51 free trade agreements with the world.
But the company mix that's here now, like with Donald Trump trying to pressure the big three to move their production entirely to the United States, if he persists with this agenda and you can't get to a favorable tariff regime with the U.S., are we talking about the Korean companies coming in, for example, and displacing that? I mean, what sort of corporate mix do you envision if you can't get the resolution you're seeking with the United States?
So we're talking with different companies, obviously with Korean car makers, obviously with German car makers, but also we're looking at and we're having conversations with Chinese automakers. And so we believe that we can create these jobs across the country. And right now, as we speak, let's all remember, we have two really important major battery plants that are being built. So the one in Windsor by LG Stellantis that is now hiring and has been hiring 1,500 people, and they're going to get to 3,000. And the other one that is being built as we speak in St. Thomas in Ontario, which will be hiring 3,000 people. So that's good news. Obviously, there's been a third shift cut in Oshawa. There are Ingersoll in the GM plant is now closed, and Brampton Stellantis has been closed. We don't accept these positions. We want to make sure that not only will we put really a lot of pressure on these automakers that are cutting jobs, we will invest in those who invest in us, because Volkswagen is investing, LG Stellantis battery plant, and Honda and Toyota have been increasing their production since the beginning of the trade war. Right. And now at this point, 77% of our car production in the country is Japanese made. Well,
Japanese companies. I got
Japanese companies.
Right.
So that's why we will work with these players. We will support Honda and Toyota. We will support Ford, who's investing a lot in Oakville.
We'll get back to the absurdity of Canadian federal politics in a moment. Just a friendly reminder to smash the like, hit subscribe. Please leave a comment below if you have something to share. Let's get back to the nutty video.
Right now, because the plant will be coming up to fruition because there's lots of changes and investments being made, and the new shifts will start again this summer, and we will attract new investments. That's our goal, and that's my ultimate priority.
Okay, I know how you just said you were very reactive in 2025, obviously because of the disruption to everything coming from the United States. That's led to some movement on policies. The electric vehicle mandate, that was the pursued plan to get to EV adoption, is gone now, and you move towards strengthening vehicle emissions.
Yep.
Why is that a better path? I know the auto sector didn't like the costs associated with the EV mandate and the credits they would have to buy, but this is less ambitious in terms of target and emissions reduction, 75% as opposed to 100%. Why is this a better path now?
So, you know, for a long, long time, the GHG emissions standards were aligned with what was being done basically in the US. What we're doing now is we're going to embrace even more reduction of GHG emissions. Our standards will be much more, I would say, ambitious, but we're aligning ourselves with what is being done in the EU. And in the EU, they don't have EV mandates. And actually, electrification is happening. And so our goal is to really get to a place where we're reducing our carbon footprint. That's our goal. But also we're embracing the technological changes that are happening in the sector. And so while before it was the policy was much more linked to the sale of EVs across the country. Now we're putting the onus much more on the car makers, on the auto manufacturers, to get to standards that are really, really ambitious regarding emission reduction. It can be different. It can be done different ways, David. It can be done through obviously EVs, but maybe hydrogen or other technologies that automakers will be developing. So it's another way to get to actually the same objective.
Okay, but so to qualify to buy these zero emission vehicles, the EVs, let's focus on that for a second because the hydrogen ones are still aspirational. You can get up to a $5,000 credit, $2,500 if it's a plug-in, but vehicles must be from a country that Canada has a free trade deal with, so not the Chinese-made vehicles that you're bringing in, and it has to be under $50,000 unless it's made in Canada.
Yep.
But there's only one completely electric vehicle that's assembled in Canada that we can find, and a large majority.
Charger.
Right, and a large majority of the other models are over 50,000. So explain to me how this is going to work when the made in Canada options are pretty narrow and there aren't that many vehicles that are necessarily under that price range.
Well, we know that basically the RAV4 is going to be eventually plug-in hybrids, and good news because Toyota is investing. We are confident that Honda will be investing more. Obviously, the Dodge Charger will be covered by that, and that is being done by Stellantis, also in Windsor. And we want to see more of that. That's the goal. And meanwhile, for the other cars that are being built in Canada, we also have the Strategic Response Fund, which you alluded in your introduction of $3 billion, because obviously we will help the companies that will continue to invest in Canada.
So that's to help them change over, say, product lines and assembly lines to switch to electric vehicles that might fit the ticket for what you're incentivizing here.
Or you know, it's been very interesting what is going on in the industry worldwide, but particularly in Canada. How CEOs are talking to us and also union leaders talking to us is how can they profit from the fact that we have so many free trade agreements. Never before did I hear a CEO say, you know what, we'll start exporting to Europe, we'll start exporting to the Middle East. Why not export into Latin America? And the trade relations are being reshaped as U.S. protectionism is just going ahead. And so that's why when you hear the Prime Minister in Davos saying, you know, middle powers will work together, concretely for auto workers, what does that mean? Well, they will be building either in Windsor, in Alliston, in Woodstock, Cambridge, Oshawa, Oakville, cars that maybe years ago were absolutely we're going to the US, and that will continue. But now they will be building for the world. And so they will be sending these cars elsewhere. And so what is then really important is that because we're not only operating in a North American reality, we need to be extremely productive. And we know we can be, because our auto workers win year after year the prizes for the quality of their work. But not only that, we have to be extremely, how can I say, we have to be at the forefront of the latest technology.
Right.
And so that's why also we're presenting this strategy. And you know what? When thinking of this and working obviously with the Prime Minister and my team, we were looking at Canadian history in automaking. And it's not the first time it has happened. In the 80s, a lot of plants from the Detroit 3 were closing. I'm from Quebec. I still remember when the Sainte-Thérèse GM plant closed, and some of my family was affected by this. And what did the Mulroney government at the time did? They brought in the Japanese automakers. It was a big thing in the 80s, but you know what happened? Nearly 40 years later, they're now doing 77% of our production, and in 40 years, they've never did a massive layoff. So that's why we want to invest in new players, and we want to support those who are supporting us.
Okay, so Minister, just one last thing I want to touch on with is there's money set aside here to look for partners to build out the charging infrastructure across the country, because range anxiety is one of the challenges that people have when buying a vehicle. It's going to take years to scale that up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, who knows how long it will take. And over that time, the incentives, the subsidies to buy the electric vehicles will go down. So why are these out of alignment, that the incentives to buy decrease over the period of time where you're scaling up the charging infrastructure to a level where Canadians will feel comfortable buying electric vehicles at scale?
And that's a fair question. So there's two things. I think that first and foremost, yes, we believe that we can have a major project across the country of EV charging stations. And you know what? There are Canadian companies that have done that in Europe. And I'm obviously thinking of a great Canadian company that is called Couche-Tard, that is called Circle K, and that has stations across the country. Whether they would do that in Canada, it would be great. The other thing also that is really important in your question is, for a long, long time, we've been working much more on the demand of the sector. We want to work on the supply. And people need to be able to have access to cheap EVs. And that's why we're bringing also in 49,000 Chinese cheaper EVs. But also, I'm in discussion with these companies to make sure that they build in Canada. And we think that we can attract investments, build EVs here, and eventually, within the next 3 years, we will be able to have made in Canada cheaper EVs. And of course, it will be aligned with our incentives going down. So that's the idea.
Okay. Mélanie Joly, we've gone over time. This Industry Minister Mélanie Joly, we appreciate you
As
joining us today.
we usually do,
We
but
often
that's
do.
fine, David.
All right. Thank you, Minister. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
We'll wrap it up right there, gang. Aaron Canadian Looney, smash the like, hit subscribe, get your Canadian federal politics right here. This CBC propaganda BS has to go away. We need an election. We need to get rid of David Cochrane. Oh, so many issues in Canada. Smash the like, hit subscribe. Aaron Canadian Looney. Thanks for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one. Ciao for now.